Today we're going to do part 2 on Chet Garthwaite and some of his book that he wrote, some more about that, and also a great deal about one of the books where he provided all the written material called Threshing Days. And we'll be looking at a few of the scenes in there, but I want to read a little bit about from the introduction here why Chet was chosen to write about these different scenes that you will see here briefly. Starts out by Philip Martin, director of the Wisconsin Folk Museum. A few days later in the mail, an envelope arrived, the first of a series of delightful short histories. Reading it, I realized here was the missing element, the story of each painting, reflecting on Laverne Cameron's images. Garthwaite's text reveals what is happening in each scene and why. Especially for us non-farmers, the stories are wonderful tools to draw readers into the rich detail of each painting. The narratives help to achieve a goal the Folk Museum had with this book, to present farm life as more than a children's story of a farmer with some corn to plant and cows to milk. Rather, explains Garthwaite, traditional farming is an extremely complex occupation. A farmer works with vast amounts of information gained, stored, and tested daily. Farmers are well-educated people, only their knowledge lies in things not learned from a book or classroom. As Chet Garthwaite told me in a classic farmer's understatement, let's just put it this way, you have to watch your calendar. For the old-time farms of the 1920s and 30s, this meant managing dozens of varied and complicated operations. Together, Cameron's paintings and Garthwaite's stories present life on the southern Wisconsin family farm. The scenes roughly span the decades of the 1920s and the 1930s. Some activities occurred a few years earlier or later, depending in part on the practice depicted and his varied use from one farm to the next. Traditional customs, which linger long after their introduction, are very hard to date. Chet has done a wonderful job to explain each scene, however, and is often able to offer a guess of a date or decade, often from the tiniest details which tell all to a farmer. My personal gratitude goes to Chet Garthwaite for his willingness not to laugh too hard when his editor needing to clarify small points. I had to pester him with so many questions, revealing my far-reaching ignorance of cows, equipment, crops, practices, in fact about most every aspect of farm life that the youngest farm child takes for granted. Now I'd like to show just a few scenes here from the book. I'll have to kind of hold it down here because it doesn't want to stay flat as usual. Here's one that I like because I remember when I was growing up, lots of little cheese factories within a short distance, no matter what direction you went. And here we have a very old scene here, and with the team there pulling up with the wagon, and an idea of how things looked in the very earlier days. Haying time. I really like this because I can remember helping to lead a horse here when I was helping to pull up things into the hay mow and that. And again, kind of the idea of a red barn, which you won't see much longer anywhere around the country. A windmill, those are quickly disappearing from scenes all over, and how a farmhouse might have looked at the time, and some of the earlier kinds of horse-drawn machines and wagons. One time that I remember fondly at Grandma's place, Grandma Hanson's, was the dinner for the threshing crew. And I remember out under the trees, there were all kinds of tables and food galore. And of course, that was one of the fun times. People would be going down a bridge or a valley, covering all the farms, and everybody working together. That's one of the atmospheres that was so good there about some of the earlier days. And one more here, quickly, steam power. Now I can remember, of course, what would come up the road wasn't like this. It was more of a gasoline power, but it was very immaculate looking and went chugging along there and was still fun to see. And this gives you an idea of what one of the early scenes was like there. See the threshing taking place and bringing in the loads and working, and of course there's always the dogs and animals around. Just a little taste of what the book is like. Now here, quickly, so we don't get too long, we have one of the many awards that Chester Garthwaite received. And we see this one was in 1991 there, Banta Award there for his writings and things that he did. There were many of these, but this is one of the examples of what can be seen there in various pictures. Now we come to one of the very important reunions for Chet. The pictures were kind of small because they were combined. The computer didn't really know the difference there, but we'll try to zoom in there to show you there with his friend, Native American, goes ahead, that he was able to run across later in life there in Montana. I will read a little bit about what they did together, why this reunion was so important to Chet. And you see in the top there, of course, he's in Montana there, and luckily at the right time there to meet up with Goes Ahead. And I'll read just a little bit here, which appeared in the newspaper quite a long time ago. Sometimes long-lost friends stumble into each other. Other times it takes a search to find someone you have been separated from over a number of years. After 47 years of no contact, Chester Garthwaite felt it was time to find Vincent Goes Ahead. When Garthwaite of Fenimore at the time served in the Army during World War II, he was a surveyor in charge of laying out military cemeteries across Europe. His assistant was an American Indian, Goes Ahead. Garthwaite and Goes Ahead became fast friends and enjoyed the time they spent together. Garthwaite got out of the service a year before Goes Ahead, and he hadn't seen or talked to the man for 47 years. That is it is until just recently. Remember, again, this appeared a long time ago. In the last few years, Garthwaite has made attempts to reach Goes Ahead through Indian charitable services and through other sources. He tracked Goes Ahead down at the Crow Agency in Montana, but couldn't call him because the reservation didn't have phones. In a recent trip with his wife out west, Garthwaite tracked down Goes Ahead during a reunion that had been meant to happen for half a century. Now, the article goes on in much more detail here, but I think this was a great thing to happen later in life there, and was bringing back a lot of early memories there for Chet and also for Goes Ahead. Now there's so much more that we could cover. We apologize, we don't want to take too long at one time doing things. But remember the Threshing Days book, that's available. That can be picked up. Just call in and the book will be made available for you. Also his book there about that he had written himself. And also, if you want to see, you're in the history room, we do have some different clippings that we were able to save and find. So again, thank you for your attention, and a very enjoyable person, and we're so glad that we had him here in our area.